Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of San Miguel de Allende. We are sincerely happy to have you here with us for today's program. We believe each of us enrich our time together, and we strive to be loving and thoughtful. Together, we all create an active, spiritually diverse, multicultural community dedicated to empowering everyone. Yes, everyone. To live lives of integrity, joy, and service to those around us. At the end of the program, we will invite you to meet for a short time in one of our small breakout groups to share your greetings and thoughts with others. If you are new to our fellowship or to Unitarian Universalism, you can remain online to join with our minister and guest minister to find out more about us or more about them. And now, as we enter this last day of Black History Month, we'd like to go back in time to April 1963 and share a current reflection on Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from the Birmingham jail.
In 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. wrote the letter from a Birmingham jail. This letter became an important rallying cry in the civil rights movement.
But this letter wasn't addressed to politicians or police officers, or even to all Americans.
The letter from Birmingham jail was addressed to clergy.
8 non-black clergy, including 2 Episcopal bishops,
2 Methodist bishops,
a Roman Catholic bishop,
a Presbyterian moderator,
and a Baptist pastor,
and a rabbi.
You see, these clergy leaders were somewhat sympathetic to the civil rights movement, but they wanted to move slowly through court cases and negotiations. They called Dr. King's work in Birmingham unwise and untimely.
But Dr. King responded bluntly and passionately.
The time for justice was now.
Now, to quote Dr. King, for years now, I've heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never. We must come to see with one of our distinguished jurists that justice too long delayed is justice denied.
Dr. King reminded those clergy that it's easy to say wait when you're not the one being oppressed.
and too many non-black clergy were not willing to speak out.
We represent 7 historic congregations in downtown Pensacola.
Despite our differences, we get together for coffee,
find common ground, and have become friends.
As leaders of religious communities, we want to be better at responding to racism than previous generations.
We recognize, as Dr. King implored, the fierce urgency of now.
the fierce urgency of now.
In the book of Exodus, we hear that when the ancient Israelites were oppressed, God heard their cry.
To our black neighbors and friends who are angry
And scared.
And frustrated,
And demanding justice,
God hears you, and so do we.
and so do we.
And we will stand with you.
We will join the work to dismantle racism.
and fight for equality and justice for all of God's children. The time is now.
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 the time is now, and together we pray.
We pray for protesters that their message would be heard.
And the violence would cease.
We pray for law enforcement, for their safety, and that they will show wisdom and restraint.
Wisdom and restraint.
And we pray that God would change our hearts
And drive racism
In all its forms,
From this country,
that we love.
Good morning. I'm Bonney McDowell, a member of the Fellowship's Board and of our COVID-19 Task Force. I add my welcome to all of you joining us today, wherever you are. The Task Force is a group of medical professionals and care team members with expertise we hope will be helpful for you during the pandemic. First, a good news update for San Miguel. The vaccine brigades are already in the local area. And as planned, they vaccinate first out in the Campo, but they should arrive in the larger towns shortly. As soon as there is official information about the dates and the vaccination sites in SMA, Everyone on the fellowship's email list will receive an update, a mailing from our administrator, Denise. But the news will come from Kate Greenaway, who's also part of the COVID-19 SMA group, which is in direct touch with the vaccination program. So we will give you accurate information, not rumors. Keep your eyes peeled for this email. And while all of San Miguel is waiting for the vaccine, it's really important to continue your safety precautions. Hang in there. Zooming out a bit, how are vaccination programs going worldwide? Well, not as efficiently as everyone had hoped. And there are many important questions still being studied. The task force currently finds some of the ideas about what's okay after you're vaccinated quite confusing, and new information comes every day. We know that fully vaccinated people won't die or get seriously ill from COVID, and what a relief that is. But we still don't know how long that protection will last. And some people will likely get a higher level of protection from the vaccine than others. And perhaps most importantly, we don't know yet whether vaccinated people may still be carriers of the virus and give it to others. Until a large percentage of the population is vaccinated, the fortunate ones who've gotten their shots need to still be very mindful of the risk they may pose to the unvaccinated. And that's true wherever you are. In the last few days, Dr. Fauci and Dr. Rachel Walensky, the new head of the CDC, have expressed concern that data suggests another surge in cases and hospitalizations may be starting in the US, in part because of the new virus variants, in part because public health restrictions are being relaxed unwisely, and despite the progress being made with vaccination programs. Here in Mexico, we have even less data and are further behind in vaccinations, so this is concerning. While researchers crunch the current numbers and try to answer these important questions, the task force suggests that we all continue to be cautious and thoughtful about our activities. It seems like the safest plan for right now. Take care of each other, my friends. And now to Tom for our opening words.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Tom Rosiello, the minister of this fellowship, and it's wonderful to be with you again. You know, each week our service is an act of recreating again and again the beloved community. Yes, we always come together to speak truth as we know it, to explore the deepest part of ourselves, to address the suffering in our world and the challenges of injustice. Yes, we are called to be doers, and the task is always great. We know we cannot do this work alone. It is only together that we are able to accomplish great things. But we not only come together to accomplish worthy goals, as noble as that is, we also come together just to be here for each other. We recognize that none of us should walk this path of life alone without support from others, especially not in this time of COVID separation. You know, we don't always recognize it, especially when life is good, but we profoundly need each other. As we do each week, we'll begin our service by lighting a chalice flame. You've heard me say before that, metaphorically speaking, it's with a spark from the flame that burns in each of us that we light our common flame. We each carry within us a light that not only guides us, but is something that we can bring to others who are in need. And the truth is, for all of us, sometimes our individual light grows dim. Sometimes we feel lost or defeated, unable to find our way, unable to bring our gifts to our community and our world. Sometimes even unable to take the next step. As I light our chalice, I will share well-known words of Albert Schweitzer that I believe ring true for us all and indeed are very central to what we do here each week. At times, our own light goes out and is rekindled by a spark from another person. Each of us has cause to think with deep gratitude of those who have lighted the flame within us. You know, when I think about rekindling flames in others, bringing hope when hope was lost, bringing opportunity when none was perceived, bringing rescue to someone trapped in circumstances beyond their control, I think about the work of a wonderful organization on whose board I had the true privilege to serve for many years, the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry. You know, it's one of the very oldest social service agencies in the United States, nearly 200 years old. It's been kindling that flame again and again for a long time. Its work has taken many forms over the years, feeding the hungry, sheltering those in need of a place to live, providing opportunities for so many kids in some tough circumstances to claim their voice and make it in this world. Young kids and incredible teenagers. The Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry has been in the forefront of helping victims of domestic abuse for half a century, renewing and running an incredible shelter that's called Renewal House, actually one of the very first shelters to open its doors to gay men who were victims of abuse, and continues to serve not only the greater community, but the LGBTQ community. Not just providing shelter, but also job training and education. Everything folks need to rebuild a life. The list of UUUM goals and things they do just goes on and on. It's a big and pretty complex organization serving a pretty large and varied community. And it takes an extraordinary person to be its leader. And they have just that in their senior minister and executive director, the Reverend Mary Margaret Earl. She is someone who I have seen time and again demonstrate the skills to reach across differences, to unite people from rich suburban UU churches with the folks of inner city Boston, and do so in a way that affirms their equal worth and dignity and unites them in common purpose. She tirelessly does this work not just with passion and commitment, but with contagious joy. When I asked her, is there something in particular you would like me to mention in my introduction? She said, tell them I'm so lucky to have my dream job. Well, Mary Margaret, the truth is, all those who are served by the urban ministry and all those who volunteer, support, and assist the urban ministry in fulfilling its mission are the lucky ones. You know, before coming to the urban ministry, the Reverend Mary Margaret Earl worked for 10 years at a faith-based nonprofit in Rhode Island serving the homeless community. She's the past president of the Rhode Island Coalition for the Homeless and a recipient of the Heroes of Faith Award from the Rhode Island State Council of Churches. Mary Margaret walks the walk, and I'm so glad she's agreed to share a bit of the journey with us this morning. You will meet her later in the service. It's not only my privilege to welcome Reverend Earl, but also a couple of other folks from Boston connected with the UU Urban Ministry are also joining us. Annie Stubbs, who is a critical part of the development team of the Urban Ministry, is here, and Chris Nelson, past president of the board, is with us. Welcome to all of you from Boston who are joining us in our service this morning. Welcome to San Miguel de Allende. And we hope you'll stay on after the service to join us for our coffee hour. And now I would like to share with you a bit more about this incredible organization. In this video that Diego will now run for you, you get a glimpse of what happens day after day at the UU Urban Ministry. It's so great to see the connections made, the work accomplished. There's a lot to negotiate in doing any work that reaches across barriers, that builds community across difference, and creates more justice. We know that from our work here in Mexico, and the folks at the UU Urban Ministry know that in the context of Greater Boston. It's hard work, and we make plenty of mistakes and missteps. What keeps us going? What continues to inspire this kind of work? What sustains it? What guides it? One word: love. Please join in singing hymn number 131, Love Will Guide Us.
Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us, will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night. If you cannot sing like angels, if you cannot speak before thousands, you can give from deep within you. You can change the world with your love. Love will guide us, peace has tried us, hope inside us, will lead the way on the road from greed to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.
Please join us in reciting our spoken covenant, first in English, then in Spanish. The words should appear on your screen. We respect the interdependent web of life and work for a just and peaceful world. We encourage the search for truth and meaning, strive for compassion in our relationships, and seek values that will benefit our lives and the lives of others. This is our covenant.
Respetamos todos los estilos de vida dentro de su red interdependiente y trabajamos por un mundo justo y pacífico. Alentamos la búsqueda de la verdad y la comprensión total. Nos esforzamos por mantener compasión en nuestras relaciones y buscamos valores que beneficien nuestras vidas y las vidas de los demás. Este es nuestro convenio.
We now enter into a very sacred time in our service, a time when members and friends share with their community significant joy, sorrows, and concerns. For each shared, we light a candle representing that person or that thought or that prayer is with us this morning. If you'd like us to share a joy, sorrow, or concern in an upcoming service, please email it to me. If you have something that you would like to share today, you can type it into the chat now. We light this first candle for Ann Feldman, Please send her your good thoughts and prayers. She's been not feeling well for a while and having trouble getting to the bottom of the problem, and she's in the hospital in Querétaro with a team of wonderful doctors doing a whole bunch of tests to hopefully get the problem solved. I know she'd appreciate your prayers and good thoughts. This candle is lit by Diana Amaya, who says that her beloved friend Rosemary died this week after fighting for 2 months with leukemia. She was only 51 years old, and Diana misses her dearly. This is a candle for justice and comes from many of you. Once again in the U.S. this week, we have seen a grand jury refuse to charge a police officer who caused the death of a black man. This week, we've also seen how fragile LGBTQ rights are, with only 3 members of the minority party in the House voting with the majority to support the Equality Act for the second time because it died in the last session of the Senate. It still faces an uphill battle there. Many people in the US, here in Mexico, and around the world are still denied equal treatment under the law because of race or gender identification or sexual orientation. This is a candle of joy for our members and friends in Texas who suffered the loss of electricity and running water and heat, and things are now getting better. This is for our newest member of the Bionic Club, Bill Dulcimer, who received a pacemaker this week and who writes, "I'm the new and improved version of a former aging UU." Jürgen Allers lights this candle as a candle of joy, noting that the U.S. Immigration Service is allowing some asylum seekers now to cross from the Mexican side of the border into the U.S., reuniting them with loved ones and allowing them to wait out their proceedings there. This is a candle of concern from Trish Schneider and others, letting us know that Omar Regal, a friend of this fellowship, a teacher and a father of 3, was robbed and beaten as he changed a flat tire in his car outside of Puebla. He and his family had been deported here to Mexico. He now has sustained significant medical bills and had many items which are necessary for his livelihood stolen. So he needs help. And if you would be interested in helping, you can contact Trish Schneider. Of course, we again light a COVID candle in memory of the lives lost, in support of those ill, a candle of hope for greater availability of the vaccines, and a candle of a reminder and a concern not to let your guard down. Our final candle is for all those joys, sorrows, and concerns held deep in our heart, but which remain unexpressed this morning, and for those that have been typed into the chat this morning. I invite you now into a time of meditation, prayer, or reflection, first guided by some spoken words and then by beautiful music. As a continuation in our observance of Black History Month, today this prayer, called A Prayer for While in the Struggle by Magali Belisari, a Black Haitian woman serving as a minister at our congregation in Rochester, New York, wrote. Her words. Spirit of light and love, spirit of resistance, spirit of generosity, that which serves as our conscience in this work, that we do now to dismantle white supremacy, to empower the marginalized, to insist that Black lives do matter. We have been angered. We have been saddened. We have been pushed to the brink once more. We are also inspired and seen resolve to do better this time, to not simply get to the other side of this moment, but to get there morally healthier, to get to a safer place for Black bodies. Spirit, help us to understand that we each have a role in justice work, for our liberations are tied to one another's. Give us the clarity of mind to know what our individual part is in the struggle, that there are many ways to protest injustice. Help us to find our way and commit to it. Spirits, we ask for guidance. Send us strength and endurance. Help us to give all to this and hold nothing back, for precious lives depend on it. We will be imperfect. Rest assured that we will mess up over and over again, and we must do it anyway. May we summon the courage to tear down these systems of injustice and to get busy creating a world community with justice for all. May it be so. Amen.
Good morning. I'm Dan Neuspiel, president of this fellowship. And as we near the end of Pledge Month, I'm excited to announce that we have exceeded our ambitious goal of $90,000, and our total is now $95,500. More on that later. I'd like to speak about why and how we pledge. My parents had very little material resources. My father, a refugee and Holocaust survivor, arrived in the US at age 38 with limited English and no profession or marketable skills. He worked in a commercial bakery until he was laid off at age 59. My mother worked in a series of part-time jobs, often 2 or 3 at once. They never owned a house, didn't have a car until I was 11, and took their first vacation after I graduated high school. Despite many hardships, my parents left me a rich legacy. From my mother, who died of cancer at 55, I received gifts of education and a commitment to social justice. She ensured that we live in a neighborhood with superior public schools, allowing me to become the first family member to finish college, even without their financial help. And her modeling of the Jewish tradition of repairing a broken world shaped my lifelong commitment to fighting for a just society. From my father, I received the gift of generosity. Despite his low wages, followed by another 25 years living on Social Security and a meager pension, he was always generous with family members and organizations serving those in need. Kathy and I have continued that spirit of generosity, and since moving to San Miguel 4 years ago, we have tithed, donating at least 10% of our income to worthy causes. We've tried to divide that amount equally, giving 5% to our UU fellowship or congregation and 5% spread among other causes important to us. The Reverend J. Leach, our minister at the UU Church of Charlotte, strongly influenced our desire to tithe. Jay explains giving as an example of interconnectedness, and I quote, "Our most radical, controversial, countercultural message just may be our affirmation that each of us, every single individual one of us, is part of an interdependent web of all existence." To make such an affirmation with full integrity suggests that what's in it for me is directly, inextricably, completely entwined in what's in it for us. If the web of existence of which we are each a part truly is interdependent, then there really is only the common good. Unquote. I agree with Jay that giving is a manifestation of our UU seventh principle, the interdependent web of all existence. And by giving, we not only benefit our fellowship and the San Miguel community, but we also grow our own spirit. Now, I understand that some of you may not be in a position to tithe, but even though we have surpassed this year's pledge goal, I encourage each of you to reflect on whether your own pledge is a measure of your commitment to our fellowship's mission. We have many ambitious but yet unfunded goals in our Envisioning the Future report, which you will hear about in some detail at our annual meeting 3 weeks from today. Just a few of these goals include both a ministerial and social action residency program, bilingual Sunday services, an intercultural musical arts program, space for our growing services, and expanded staff. By the way, in order to vote at the annual meeting, your pledge form must be submitted by tomorrow. Every dollar above our pledge goal brings us closer to becoming the fellowship we all envision. So please pledge if you haven't, and consider raising your pledge if you can. I conclude this testimony with the words of John C. Morgan, quote, "In the end, it won't matter how much we have, but how generously we have given. It won't matter how much we know, but rather how well we live. And it won't matter how much we believe, but how deeply we love," unquote. Now, I'd like to introduce our weekly offering time. Our fellowship strives to support each other and our surrounding Mexican community, especially during these difficult times. In addition to membership pledges, we rely on your weekly donations to help us do the work we do. So we will pause here so that you may connect to our donation link, which will appear in the chat box and the following screen. And thank you for your generosity.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and by this we live. From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and by this we live.
If I can help somebody as I pass along, if I can cheer somebody with a word or song, if I can show somebody he is traveling wrong, then my living shall not be in vain. If I can do more duty as a Christian ought, if I can bring their beauty to a world apart, if I can spread, Lord, message that the Master taught, then my living shall not be in vain. Then my living shall not be in vain. Then my living shall not be in vain. If I can help somebody as I pass along, then my living shall not be in vain. Then my living shall not be in then my living shall not be in vain. Then my living shall not
Good morning. It is such an honor to join you here at the UU Fellowship of San Miguel de Allende. I have been boasting of late that, to my knowledge, this is the Unitarian Universalist Urban Ministry's first international spotlight. On behalf of our organization, which is grounded in our shared Unitarian Universalist values, I bring thanks for coming this morning to learn about the work that we do 2,500 miles from you. My prayer this morning is that you find some words here for your own justice journey in Mexico. It is a joy to be co-leading the service with my dear colleague, the Reverend Tom Rosiello, who so ably and wisely served on our board for more than a decade. When I mention his name to those who served with him, their eyes still light up. His commitment to our faith and to justice served the urban ministry well. Reverend Rosiello has shared with me with joy what a wonderful, justice-seeking, lively, and generous congregation you are. It sounds like you are fortunate to have found one another, and it is good to be here with you. This morning, I bring you a message about our Unitarian Universalist work in Boston, where we strive to face the legacy of racism. I trust that you, in your context, can translate these words into the ways that racism, born of the colonial Mexico caste system, shapes your community. Sadly, racism is an international plague. As Tom mentioned, the Urban Ministry is a nearly 200-year-old Boston-based nonprofit that was founded by a Unitarian minister. We have about 50 Unitarian Universalist member congregations around Greater Boston, located mostly in white and affluent suburban communities. Over those nearly 2 centuries, we've done many things: founded an Asian appropriate food pantry, built elder housing, run a free legal clinic. For the past several decades, we've been located in a neighborhood in Boston called Roxbury, the historic heart of the African-American community in Boston, housed in a historic meeting house, which is Boston's oldest surviving wood frame church building. We inherited this building and campus in 1976 from a UU congregation that was dying as its white congregants left the neighborhood that had by then become Boston's Black community. Our location had religious roots going back to the 1630s when the original congregation gathered there. Now, these years later, in 2021, we do 3 basic things on that place. We serve survivors of domestic violence at our shelter and offer a job readiness program for survivors from across Greater Boston. We provide tutoring and high school programming to Boston high school students of color, seeking to level the educational playing field and assist with college applications. We teach young people an appreciation for history and use the historic campus we inherited as in Roxbury as a living classroom to give historic walking tours. And we engage our neighborhood, especially through the arts and humanities and through partnership. In Boston, with the rest of the country, we continue moving into 2021, but the shadows of 2020 remain. As you know, the United States entered 2020 awash in anger and division, divided on the most basic of things like science. Late last winter, the pandemic befell us. And in the spring, we were jolted by the casual police killing of George Floyd, stunned to see 400 years of racism distilled into 8 interminable minutes. And last summer, we witnessed the Black Lives Matter uprising in the streets and on our town commons. We entered this new year witnessing again the ongoing division with rioting in Washington, D.C. White people in the United States have been confronted squarely by the legacy of enslavement. For the past 5 years, truths long shrouded have been revealed. Racism no longer dwelled only in the interpretation of health and wealth and educational disparities. Facts like the net worth, which is what you possess after you subtract your debts, not your salary, but where facts like the net worth for white households in Boston is $247,000. And for Black families in Boston is $8. Facts like the average lifespan in Roxbury is 30 years less than it is 1 mile away in the white neighborhood of Back Bay. Facts like African American adults are 6 times as likely to be incarcerated as whites. Racism and white supremacy over the past several years became even plainer than those numbers. White supremacists marched proudly, stepping out of the mist. Racist ideas and attitudes were shouted into the open air for all of us to see and hear. On January 6th, we watched the Confederate flag waved proudly in our Capitol. And it has shaken and sobered us. The truth of our country's history, the legacy of enslavement that lives in all our US institutions and also within us, emerged from the shadows. And the gift is this: what we can see, we can actually do something about. This is a moment that we are called to. This is a moment when we as a faith community have an uncommon potential to help give birth to something new. The beginning of 2021 didn't mark the end of a struggle, but a new and hopeful chapter in this struggle. The work before us to heal racism will be the outward-facing work of petition and protest and march and mobilizing. But it also must be the work inward, the work within ourselves. The journey inward to facing our own racism is hard work and essential work. This morning, I wanted to walk with you on that journey, the journey that I've been on since arriving at the UU Urban Ministry 6 years ago. I arrived at the Urban Ministry after a decade of working in the homeless community in Rhode Island. I came ready to work with domestic violence survivors and to support young people. But when I arrived, I learned quickly that there was more to our organization than our list of programs. We stood at the intersection between communities, rooted in the historic heart of Boston's Black community that had experienced and borne witness to the city's legacy of racism, and encircled by white suburban UU congregations being awakened to that legacy. Standing at that intersection meant reckoning with racism. But I didn't come to the Urban Ministry to talk about racism. I wasn't ready for it. And on one of my very first days, the police officers in Ferguson, Missouri, who had killed an unarmed 18-year-old Black man named Michael Brown, were not indicted. This moment propelled the Black Lives Matter movement into the national consciousness. And UU Urban Ministry staff came to me that day and asked me to make a public statement. I didn't know what to say. I was afraid to talk about racism. That day was the beginning of a new leg of my journey, not just my outward journey for justice, but also my inward journey. And this morning I share 3 lessons that I'm learning on the way. First, the spiritual journey of dismantling racism, work that we are all called to do, asks us to tolerate discomfort and pain. The pain of learning the real history of race in America, or learning the history of race in Mexico. The pain of learning the way it privileges white people, the pain of facing those health and wealth and educational disparities. Robin DiAngelo, in her book, White Fragility, writes this: race will influence whether we will survive our birth, where we are most likely to live, which schools we will attend, who our friends and partners will be, what careers we will have, how much money we will earn, how healthy we will be, and even how long we can expect to live, she wrote. DiAngelo, who is white, spent spent years as a diversity and inclusion trainer, and saw over and again white people, and especially those who saw themselves as progressive, as so defensive about witnessing white supremacy that their defensiveness protected the systems that perpetuate it. A step on our journey is laying down our defenses, to become aware when our shoulders tighten and we get ready to say, but wait, not me. A step on our journey is to keep opening, waiting, breathing. A step on our journey is the practice of stillness. Black theologian Howard Thurman wrote this: listen to the long stillness. New life is stirring. New dreams are on the wing. New hopes are being readied. Humankind is fashioning a new heart. He wrote, humankind is forging a new mind. God is at work. This is the season of promise, he wrote. When we still our defenses, something new may emerge. A second lesson on my journey, and this is so hard, is letting go of goodness. Our task is not to seem good. It's paying attention. It's looking at what needs to be witnessed. In White Fragility, D'Angelo describes that our biggest hurdle as people who are white in addressing racism is white intolerance to thinking that we participate in the systems that uphold racism, in seeing how these systems benefit us. D'Angelo writes, I could see the power of the belief that only bad people were racist. I could see how we are taught to think about racism as only discrete acts committed by individual people rather than as a complex and interconnected system. It became clear that if I believe only bad people who intended to hurt others because of race could ever do so, she wrote, I would respond with outrage to any suggestion that I was involved in racism. She continued, of course, that belief would make me falsely accused of something terrible, and of course, I would want to defend my own character, she wrote. When we protect our sense of being good at the expense of seeing truth, we risk doing more harm. None of us created the world into which we were born. We were born into a nation built upon enslavement. Our modern police forces were born of slave patrols whose charge was capturing fleeing slaves. Our founding fathers enslaved people even while writing the Declaration of Independence. It would be impossible to imagine that we did not inhale racism like a villager living by the smokestacks inhaled pollution. When we protect our goodness, instead of examining our contribution to racism and white supremacy, we uphold it. We need to trust that we are beloved. That is guaranteed and non-negotiable. And then we need to face what is. My third lesson is that working towards justice is not just toil. There is joy in the journey, joy in meeting sisters and brothers working alongside us, joy in meeting new people across difference. In the past 6 years, I have had 1,000 hard and unsettling moments, challenging moments, awkward moments, moments that I needed to breathe and listen my way through. But I have met the most wonderful people along the way. That's how this work is. We don't move alone. We build up our human family as we go. I have met white allies who have modeled humility and taught me to follow Black leaders. I have met Black leaders who have spoken truth and shown grace and generosity and forgiveness. I have listened to Black elders sharing stories of the Boston of their childhoods. And I have sat at the table with people building up the sisterhood and brotherhood of the human family and laughed and broken bread and known this is blessed and beautiful work. This is a joy. No matter how hard and uncomfortable, this is the work worth doing. In her book, Healing Zen, author Ellen Burks, a nurse who works with ill patients, describes the work of caregivers for those who are sick, and she writes this: healing work is not only physical and psychological, it is also spiritual. Spirituality opens you to the mystery and wonder of life and fills you with energy and vitality, she wrote. Spirituality results in a deep sense of connection with all people, all creatures, and the earth. Spiritual development manifests in love and compassionate action, she wrote. She was writing of the work of healing patients who are sick. We are tasked with healing a culture that is sick, and we begin where we are. When we pick up the work of the world, when we are willing to climb the mountain towards justice one step at a time, when we are willing to do the work outwardly and inwardly, we infuse our lives with our true meaning. I invite you to join the work of the urban ministry during this pandemic time when such remote connection is suddenly possible. Join us on Tuesday, March 9th for a virtual panel on Henry Hampton, who produced Eyes on the Prize while living in our Roxbury neighborhood. Learn about our Roxbury Artist Amplification Project, which invites Unitarian Universalist congregations to showcase Black artists from Boston virtually. Join our mailing list for ways to partner with us in this work. New life is stirring, Howard Thurman wrote. New dreams are on the wing, new hopes are being readied. Humankind is fashioning a new heart. Humankind is forging a new mind, he said. God is at work. This is the season of promise. Amen, and may it be so. And I invite you now to join with me in singing one of my favorite hymns, I Know This Rose Will Open.
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know, 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 I know this rose will open. I know my fear. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose. I know this rose. I know this rose. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose. I know this rose. I know this rose. I know this rose. I know my fear. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know
We enter this new year shaken and sobered, witnessing what has been revealed, the racism embedded in our institutions and the racism that dwells within us. This is the challenge. This is the gift. This is the call to face what is and to live into our potential as people and as a faith to make change that is deep and transformational and enduring. Amen.
It has been wonderful to have all of you with us today, especially those who are joining us for the first time. And personally, it has been a joy for me to welcome our guests from Boston. And know you are always welcome to join us. Remember that everyone is invited to stay on Zoom after the postlude to meet new friends and see old ones and share thoughts on today's message. You may choose to participate in a small group by selecting to be assigned to a breakout room. Or if you're new or visiting or just want to connect with our guest right away, just stay in the main room, do nothing. Mary Margaret and I, as well as some members of our welcoming team, will be waiting for you there. Next week, we'll explore the tragic journey of Native Americans and take some inspiration from their words and their music. Our guest speaker will be our own David Stia, and I and other members of the Sunday Service Committee will be participating in the service as well. Also, I will be teaching a 3-session course on exploring Unitarian Universalism, a sort of introduction to Unitarian Universalism, but anyone's welcome to take it. It's starting in mid-March. Information is available in the order of service today and in tomorrow's newsletter. You can contact me, or probably even better, contact Diana Amaya to sign up or get more information. She's helping me with the course, and she's our administrator. And a very, very special thank you to Mary Margaret for being with us today, and for your inspiring message, and for the work you do every day to make real the principles and values of Unitarian Universalism in Greater Boston. You know, I've loved the urban ministry for a long time. And when I think about you doing the great work that you do in your wonderful facilities, both incredibly historic and modern and new, I think of those famous lines dating back to just before when this whole urban ministry thing started. Lines from John Winthrop in a sermon 1630, given aboard the ship Arbella, heading for the New World, for Boston. His words describing a shining city on a hill. You know, I know those words have been hijacked by a couple of past presidents to mean American exceptionalism, but that's not how I think about them. When I think of the shining light on a hill in Boston, I think of the urban ministry. Literally, with its incredible meeting house on top of that hill in Roxbury, with its high steeple in which lanterns have hung as beacons in the past, but more so in a metaphorical sense. I think of the light of hope, of love, the light that is drawn in youth and adults from struggling, often lacking the resources they need to have a better life. Thank you for your ministry, and thank you for being the light on the hill in Boston. We'll now extinguish the flame in our chalice, but not the light. Whether you're here in San Miguel, or in some other part of Mexico, or in Canada, or Texas, or Boston, wherever you are, carry the light with you. Remember that you always have the opportunity to share this precious light. Please find a way to do so this week. And may peace be with you till we meet again.
77, Port Elizabeth weather fine. It was business as usual in police room 619. Oh, be cool, because be cool. Oh, be cool, because the man is dead. The man is dead. When I try to sleep at night, I can only dream in red. The outside world is black and white with only one color dead. Oh, be cold, because be cold. Oh, be cold, because be cold. Hear the murder, the man is dead, the man is dead. You can blow out a candle, but you can't blow out a fire. Once the flames begin to catch, the wind will blow it higher. Oh, be cold, because be cold. Oh, be cold, because be cold. Hear the murder, the man is dead, the man is dead.